to the season finale of You're All Doomed, the podcast that floats its way through Jason Lives Friday the 13th, Part 6, 13 minutes at a time. I'm Masters of the Universe devotee Greg.
And I'm Brian.
And this final segment begins with Jason leaping into Tommy's boat and ends with the Paramount Pictures logo. Encircled by flames, still in the middle of the lake, Tommy is struggling to get his chain around Jason's neck. They kind of go back and forth a little bit, and Jason gets knocked back into the water. When he springs up again, he's fully on fire this time. But Tommy does manage to get the loop of the chain around his neck and get it pretty tight.
Meanwhile, the weight of the boulder is starting to crack the boat. So it's starting to weaken the frame of the boat. And so when Jason does pounce into the boat that one last time, he breaks it in two and sending everyone into the lake.
Yeah, the boulder immediately sinks to the bottom, trapping now Jason. He's about 5 feet below the surface. So he is fully submerged, and there's some distance from the top of his head to the surface of the water. There's a pretty nice shot of the boulder landing on top of a Welcome to Camp Crystal Lake sign that has Camp Blood scrawled over the top of it. So we do get one last little harken back to the days when it was, before it was known as Forest Green.
Aside from the fact that it's incredibly convenient that this boulder lands directly next to the sign, I do wonder how it ended up there. We know that they had changed the name of the town and the camp to Forest Green to help people forget about what happened there. But I wonder if it was like a police cleanup crew that threw it into the lake, the sign into the lake, or if it was just like a counselor that did it years earlier. But I'm just wondering how it ended up there.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you would think they would have wanted to destroy all remnants of what had gone on before if they were so interested in wiping the slate clean. I almost picture it being like whoever was in charge of dismantling or refurbishing this property when the name change occurred just kind of angrily flung that sign out into the lake as sort of a final fuck you in some way.
I kind of like that, because especially if they decided to destroy the entire camp and they threw all of the wreckage from the old cabins or whatever, and Steve's boathouse, and, just like all that stuff like into the bottom of the lake, it would have been kind of cool. I mean, it would just been a mess of pile of wood, but it would have been kind of cool to imply that
there's like a graveyard of the camp beneath
the waves. Literally buried it so that it would never be seen again. That'd be kind of cool. Or maybe see some signs that indicated cabin numbers to let you know that they destroyed everything and just put it at the bottom of the lake for people to never see again.
Tommy is struggling to keep his head above water, but Jason grabs him and pulls him under and begins strangling him, keeping Tommy from reaching air at the surface, to the point where Tommy actually seems to succumb to lack of oxygen. Jason then releases him, and Tommy's body kind of floats to the surface in a way that makes it look like he's at the very least unconscious. He may in fact be dead. Megan sees Tommy's body kind of bob up and runs heroically down to the dock and leaps into the water, swimming to her new boyfriend. She rolls him over to get his face and nose to air, and begins towing him back to land. So, I mean, this is a pretty tough girl. Unfortunately, Jason is still down there, and he grabs her ankle and kind of starts playfully dunking her, letting her bob to the surface and then yanking her back down, almost like a pool prank or something.
Megan is eventually able to make her way over to what remains of the boat and is able to fire up the outboard motor.
With no leverage. The fact that she can get that ripcord pulled is kind of impressive.
While in the water, yeah, that's tough. But she manages to do it, and she quite wisely turns the motor until the propeller is facing Jason, and the blade is just carving the shit out of Jason's face until we hear a snap, and Jason's head just kind of falls to the side, and this just absolute like puddle of chunky pieces of flesh and blood just float to the surface. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it was pretty great. Up until that neck snap, Jason was kind of comically jittering around as the propeller was buzzing his neck and chest. So it was a pretty shocking turn when all of a sudden that flood of gore just comes out of his opened neck. It was awesome.
I do wonder, and part of our job on this podcast is to kind of pick things apart, but we've seen him take multiple shots, from a shotgun, from a gun, didn't even flinch, but then suddenly this outboard motor to the face destroys him. And there's just not a lot of consistency in what slows him down and what doesn't. So what was it about the blade to the face that finally did him in?
Fair question. I mean, there's we do get a little bit of a shot of him drifting in the murk, and I noticed that the right side of his mask is cracked away. So I almost wonder if that's a little indication from the filmmakers, like, okay, this is serious, because it broke even Jason's mask. So now he's really fucked up, because I mean, he got shot in the face and it didn't seem to damage the mask at all.
There was a little bullet hole, but yeah, it didn't like crack it and break it in half or anything.
So this seemed almost like the mask is a totem of his power, and the fact that it is indeed pretty badly damaged by the boat propeller indicates that this outboard motor did more damage than anything we've seen, beforehand.
Now that Jason's face is just a chunky blob of chopped up flesh, Megan is able to swim back to shore with Tommy's body. And we get a very quick shot of Jason's body just now hanging lifeless, tethered to the bottom of the lake. But back on shore, Megan's doing CPR on Tommy, and he eventually wakes up. And the first thing Tommy says is, "It's over. It's finally over. Jason is home."
Although I wonder how he knows, because he was unconscious for all of this. So
right.
As far as he's concerned, Megan could have just managed to get away and Jason's still down there. But I guess even that would satisfy Tommy's plan. Jason is shackled to a boulder in the lake, which was his goal. The outboard motor was an improvisation on Megan's part. All the campers have gathered around while Megan is rescue breathing and is happy to see Tommy cough up the water and revive. We see one little boy wearing his Masters of the Universe jammies, featuring the popular character Mechaneck, who has a cybernetic neck extension that allows his head to pop about 3 feet higher than the rest of his body. In universe, this T-shirt is kind of on the tail edge of relevancy. If you assume that the final chapter, where Tommy was a young boy, took place in the year 1984, this is at least 10 years or more after that movie. The Masters of the Universe cartoon was only on air until 1985. Reruns continued to air until 1990, but this pair of jammies must be a thrift store buy or hand-me-downs from an older brother or something. Of course, in our world, it was filmed in 1986, so sure, the kid could have had Mechaneck jammies, no problem. But in terms of the universe, it doesn't make as much sense. Megan and Tommy together turn to watch the burning boat finally extinguish itself out on the water. Tenderly, they embrace, celebrating their victory. And we fade out and fade back into daytime at the lake.
So we slowly move across the surface of the lake, and then we head below the water to see Jason's body still floating there, except this time there's one very unique difference, and that's his eyes are open. Jason lives.
It's a beautiful end to this epic tale, and it's hilariously recreated in Lake Louise in Crosby, Minnesota. 112 feet below the surface, someone put a mannequin dressed as Jason Voorhees with a chain around its neck and anchored it to the bottom for scuba divers to find in the murky Minnesota waters. I would absolutely love to be on a dive certification or something like that and be swimming along happily, only to find myself face to face with Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, I think the trick with that is to not let the divers know that it's down there and just send them on a random lake dive and then have them stumble upon it themselves. That would be the ultimate reveal, because I like if I was underwater and I was just swimming around and came face to face with that, Jesus Christ.
It's probably a little bit dangerous. You don't want to spook scuba divers 112 feet below the surface, but yeah, that would be pretty amazing. We then bust into the closing credits, set to a reprise of Alice Cooper's "The Man Behind the Mask," which, despite my earlier comments about Alice Cooper's relevancy in this era, it's a great song. I love it. No one in the crew really jumped out at me, but I did find myself watching to see how many people had nicknames in quotations. The only one I was able to find was the best boy electric is John Fest Sandow. Some of the actors that we haven't had a chance to discuss so far, Jason Voorhees was ultimately played by C.J. Graham. He replaced the bitch tits guy who did the first few shots. I love that CJ's Wikipedia page says he's known for playing Jason Voorhees. That's pretty awesome. I'm envious of that description. He's an ex-military guy. As I said, he replaced Dan Bradley, who briefly played Jason for the first sequence that they shot. CJ then went on to play the Hell Cop in 1991's Highway to Hell, which is a surprisingly star-studded horror comedy written by Brian Helgeland, who wrote L.A. Confidential and some other great movies. CJ will be appearing in the forthcoming 13 Fanboy, which is Debbie Sue Voorhees' Friday the 13th themed fan film. And he really seems to love having had the opportunity to play Jason. He wasn't in the business before this movie and hasn't done a ton since then. He went into casino management and owned a nightclub and is now retired, but really seems to be fond of his legacy. And despite this, he passed on lobbying to play the character in Freddy vs. Jason because of his respect for Kane Hodder, who went on to play Jason Voorhees several times. So yeah, C.J. Graham just seems like a really good dude. And I like what he did with this role. I thought he had some good movement, and I love when he bashes through the door, like you said. He played a really great version of Jason.
Yeah, so far I'd say this is one of my favorite versions of Jason, just not only in appearance, but just the way he kind of goes about his business. It's just a really kind of cool, like iconic version of Jason, I think.
Little Nancy was played by Courtney Vickery. She only has one other credit, 1988's Zelly and Me, which features Isabella Rossellini, David Lynch in an acting role, and Joe Morton, the guy who played Miles Bennett Dyson from Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Your Girlfriend Megan was played by Jennifer Cook. She came from recurring roles on Guiding Light and V, the series, as the Star Child, who is half human, half visitor. She only had one miniseries role after this movie and left acting. She became involved in the tea business Celestial Seasonings with her husband. But she did appear in Crystal Lake Memories, talking about her time as Megan.
In 1996, Jennifer and her husband, who was the founder of the Celestial Seasonings tea chain, released a cookbook called Cooking with Tea. And Greg, I was able to track down a copy, and I got you one as a gift.
Oh my God. She's on the cover.
She is on the cover.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. Oh my gosh. It's a landscape format book, which means it's bound on the short edge, which is something as a former book production person always drove me nuts. It's got some lovely 4-color end papers illustrated with a cozy family of bears drinking tea in front of the fireplace. A very nice book jacket. Wow, this is a treat. Published by Park Lane Press, a division of Random House Value Publishing. Oh my goodness. She's now known as Jennifer Siegel. It says, the book jacket says she became a professional actress at the age of 9. She has appeared in over 200 TV commercials and has starred in television daytime and primetime drama and miniseries. It says absolutely nothing about her time as Megan Garris.
Yeah, I don't know if that would help sell the Cooking with Tea books. I mean, in this case it did, but...
The book is copyright 1996, so this could be a very real collector's item. Why did you buy this? We need to make one of these recipes while we're here recording.
I thought you were going to say we should come up with our own recipe book, like Cooking with Jason or something.
I like that idea even more. Well, after our busy recording day, I think we should concoct some chamomile hot toddy throat soother, which is featured on page 124 of this fantastic tea cookbook.
It sounds delicious.
I'm scanning the acknowledgments page to see if there's any mention of Tom McLaughlin or David Kagan, or I don't see anything. So I think she's successfully purged Friday the 13th from her professional life. Well, thank you. I have a feeling that may spark an interest in preparing tea-based concoctions.
Caffeinated recipes.
Yes. Tommy Jarvis was this time played by Tom Matthews, a veteran of primetime soap operas Dynasty and Falcon Crest. He had one foot in the horror genre by appearing in Return of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead Part 2. He also appeared in Alien from L.A., which is Kathy Ireland's star turn in the mid-'90s. And he worked a lot with Albert Pyun, the director who did Cyborg and the really wretched direct-to-video Captain America movie. Tom Matthews is actually pretty good pals with George Clooney, and I have a pretty cool photo of him at George Clooney's wedding to Amal, featuring other popular actors, Richard Kind, Grant Heslov, and the late Miguel Ferrer. He was also friends with James Karen, a renowned actor who appeared in Poltergeist as the bastard owner of the real estate company that put the homes on top of the graves and only moved the headstones. Tom Matthews reprised his role as Tommy for the Friday the 13th The Game, which we will be playing all weekend on the Nintendo Switch. It seems like he stepped out of the acting business for a while to own his own construction company and raise his children. But I think, he seems like a good dude, and I really liked him as Tommy Jarvis.
Yeah, he did make a brief appearance in the Friday the 13th fan film called Never Hike Alone. He was a paramedic, but he had a name tag on that said Tommy Jarvis. So it was clearly in universe and a return of that character. And it sounds like there was going to be a sequel to that fan film that Tommy Jarvis might appear in again.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be easy to step into a role that was played by two actors previously, even if one of them was a young boy. Corey Feldman was only like 12 or 13 at the time. And so, I mean, there's not necessarily a ton of continuity in Tommy's character, but I thought he was kind of a badass in this movie, and he had some funny lines. So I liked the personality that Tom Matthews brought to the role. I think that's pretty much all I've got for this movie. What about you, Brian?
That is it, unless you want to start whipping up some recipes.
I will head into the kitchen right now. Thanks very much for listening to us this season. We've got one more bonus episode coming up where we talk about some of the bigger picture discussions. But I hope you enjoyed Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6.
And until next time, ya bang! I mean, you're all doomed.